Luke chapter 7, verse 36. One of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him, and he went into the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. And behold, a woman of the city who was a sinner, when she learned that Jesus was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster flask of ointment, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner." And Jesus answering him said, "Simon, I have something to say to you." And he answered, "Say it, teacher." A certain moneylender had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii, and the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now which of them will love him more? Simon answered, "The one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt." And he said to him, "You have judged rightly." Then turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore, I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But he who is forgiven little loves little." Weeks ago, I was asking the Lord, what is it that you want from us this Lenten season? What is it that you want from your church? And I believe he answered that we would love him with all our heart. And he reminded me of this passage. He who has been forgiven much loves much, but he who has been forgiven little loves little. And the reality is, we have been forgiven far more than we can ever imagine. But we all view our forgiveness differently. And what this passage is saying is that the way we view our forgiveness will affect the way that we love. In this passage, there's a man called Simon who is a Pharisee. Outwardly, he was very put together, very polished, very religious, but inwardly full of pride, full of judging, full of exalting himself and putting others down, because he viewed his sin as very little, and he viewed his forgiveness cheap, and therefore he loved little. We also have this woman of the city who outwardly was not put together at all. Outwardly a sinner, but inwardly she was broken over her sin. Broken over her sin, yet full of thanksgiving and worship and devotion to Jesus, for she saw her sin as very great, and she saw her forgiveness as an amazing thing, and therefore she loved much. And my prayer for us today is that we too would see our sin as very great. That God would open our eyes to see our sin as we should, and that we would see our forgiveness as a precious thing to us. And in return, it would lead us to live a life of devotion and love for the one who first loved us.